Did you know there is no such thing as a god on Runeterra, and Riot will insist on this? Technically, and I mean very technically, beings like Volibear, Anivia, Ornn, or Ilawi's god Nakakiboros, and even creatures like Bard, Aurelian Sol, or the Aspects are not gods. They are merely, and I say merely with some big air quotes around it, merely extremely powerful spirit beings. The gods of the Freljord, for example, are primordial spirits connected to the land, drawing their power from the landscape of the Freljord itself. Nakakiboros is something similar, a spirit god formed from the motion of ocean waves and tides and currents. But gods also draw their power from different places. Janna, for example, is a spirit god of wind who used to draw her power from the worship of sailors, but as Shurima banned her worship, she was mostly forgotten, which left her weak and insubstantial. Then there was a huge industrial accident in Zaun, which caused a lot of people to start praying really hard for access to fresh air really fast, and this surge of faith and belief gave her the power to once again fully manifest, taking up a new role as the god of clean air in Zaun. Cosmic beings, like especially Aurelian Sol, are on another scale of power entirely. He is a primordial cosmic dragon with the literal power to forge stars and make galaxies. He was born with the universe and is basically an embodiment of the concept of celestial creation. And yet, he is not a god, and Riot is pretty specific about this. He's just a member of an extremely powerful species of creature called the Celestials. Riot's insistence on this technicality comes probably at least partly from censorship concerns. Some markets are pretty strict about religion and religion-adjacent concepts in media for ratings purposes, and it's probably just easier to sidestep that problem whenever possible. But it's also a good way to avoid some sticky world-building questions. A lot of people generally understand a god to be some form of an omnipotent being, at least within their portfolio of abilities, so by deliberately calling them demigods or spirit gods instead, Riot can justify placing some pretty arbitrary limits on their influence, relevance, and power, so not every narrative decision has to account for all of them all of the time. Not every thunderstorm was caused by Volibear, not every great change or tidal wave is caused by Nakakiboros, not every fear comes from Fiddlesticks, and not every death is handled by the Kindred. If a writer wants to do something unique or special with a certain story beat, they don't have to account for the influence of every relevant deity who happens to also be a popular champion. Ultimately though, while Runeterra doesn't technically have gods, in all but name, Runeterra has as many gods, and maybe even more, as any other big sprawling fantasy universe. Of course, this is just all the current state of the lore as we know it, and it could change quite radically anytime Riot feels like retconning it. Remind me at some point to tell you all about how once upon a time in the lore, the Targonians were a sci-fi expansionist space empire, and the Darkin were an alien invasion force. That was a weird period.